Hi, I am Allie Camilletti, and you are listening to Snack Leadership. I will be talking about everything leadership, broken down into bite-sized pieces. You will hear what different leadership skills look like in organizations and how they can rise teams up or take them down. I help leaders build resilience and improve performance by bringing awareness to opportunity behaviors in my business. Spark your mindset. I provide leadership and sales coaching, as well as team building and guest speaking. My hope is for you to feel inspiration and to create a spark in your mindset. Hi, everyone. Today, we are talking about sustainable success. Sustainable success is achieving long-term, positive results that can be maintained over time, focusing on balance, resilience, and adaptability, and often encompassing environmental, social, and economic aspects. Marisol Solarte-Erlacher, MA, LPC, is an award-winning trauma expert, keynote speaker, and corporate consultant. She is also the creator and host of the podcast Resilience and Resistance. Marisol started her work as a psychotherapist providing bilingual and culturally resonant services. She has spearheaded research on ethnic and ego identity. A leader in her field, Marisol was a clinical supervisor for Masters of Counseling students at the University of Colorado at Denver, and continues to coach therapies whose work focuses on trauma and EMDR therapies. Now, I've said EMDR therapies 1,000 times probably, and I want to give the actual definition. So it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
Yes, that's
Marisol, correct. I'm so grateful for you today and to have a conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start off with what's something that you've recently learned about yourself?
Well, I really was sitting with this question because I think it's such an important one. And I think that most recently what I've learned about myself through some interactions, and I can go a little bit deeper in terms of what those were, is that I haven't really fully trusted myself until recently. And I think that there are probably people in my life, if they listen to this, would be like, yeah, of course, we all knew that. Because I'm the person who tends to seek consultation. I like ask people for advice. I really check things out before I do them or before I make big decisions. But I think part of that was because I wasn't trusting myself. And I have come to the understanding that my gut and my understanding of what needs to be done is probably really good, and that I need to really trust that.
Was it something significant that happened that made you realize that?
Yeah, there were actually two incidents. So I have been a clinician for the past 21 years, and I recently retired. So my last official day as a therapist after 21 years was March 31st. It was a big deal, and it had been in the process because I've been building this other business around building resilience and creating psychological safety in organizations and companies. And previous to that, obviously, I'm an EMDR therapist, and I've been an EMDR therapist since 2004, which is wild to me. Because back in 2004, people thought, like, what is this weird therapy where you like wave your finger in front of people's faces? Those who don't know therapy, that's not going to make any sense. But it really wasn't as established as it is now. And now, 30 plus years later, it's really established itself as a therapy that is really important for the treatment of trauma. But I was on a board, an EMDR related board, and I had to make a really difficult decision to resign at the end of my presidency. So I was the president for 2 years. I ended up resigning at the end of my 2 years as president, declined another year as past president. And that was a really difficult decision. And there were lots of reasons why I made that decision. And I really, really leaned into trusting myself because I'm a very overly responsible person.
Yeah.
I can't emphasize enough how responsible I feel. Like I'm the type of person who's like, if I'm at the gym and they tell me I have to do 20 sit-ups, I can't do 18. You know, because I'm too. Um, so I made the decision to do that, and it was really one of the best decisions I ever made. And I questioned it. You know, there were times where I was like, am I doing the right thing? Am I, you know, and I really struggled with that. And similarly, I think just when I'm in different meetings or I'm engaging with different people, I get a deep sense about what's happening in those situations. And so I'm really leaning into trusting myself in that. And sometimes I feel a little embarrassed to think about not having done that for so long, especially because I'm a person who not only is a therapist, but I've been in therapy for 30 years. And so I feel like I have a lot of insight. I feel like I work on myself constantly. So, yeah, learning that about myself in like a very deep way is pretty humbling.
It's so true, though. And I see that a lot that comes up as something people learn, like imposter syndrome, right? And I would think it would be natural that you would seek counsel because I kind of envision that you are a bit of a researcher. And so that would fall in line with that characteristic.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that I'm a curious person by nature, and so I'm always like interested in what other people think about what's happening. And I always love getting people's insight, and that's probably part of, you know, having been a therapist for so long. So one of the beautiful things about being a therapist is being in community with other therapists and talking about things and like, you know, really trying to figure out what's happening in terms of a case. And so I really love that. So I'm sure that that's part of it. So I don't want to be too hard on myself that like I'll probably continue to do that forever. But I do think always a thread of not truly trusting my gut instinct or not wanting to lean into that completely.
Yeah, I completely understand and relate.
Uh, yeah.
So, when did you really start embodying this leadership skill of sustainable success?
I think that it was pretty early on. I will say when I first started my career as a therapist, I really thought I would do nonprofit work forever. That was really where my heart and passion was. Being in service to community. Like I did a leadership program really early on in my career that really focused on servant leadership. And I was just telling you how I was redoing my office and I pulled out my old servant leadership guide, and it's really been the framework for the way that I think about leadership. And so when I think about sustainability in terms of my leadership, I think about, I guess this comes back to this theme around curiosity. When I started my private practice, which was a total divergence from being in the nonprofit world, I was like, okay, I'm going to be running a business now, but I don't know anything about running a business. I all I know is like I know a couple of things and I feel very confident about my ability to do it, but I know nothing about it. And so I became very committed to learning the things that I needed to. And I actually did seek out a lot of counsel. I met with people who had had successful private practices. I met with people who had successful businesses and asked them, like, tell me everything that you wish you knew when you started. And I think from that standpoint, I was really able to take that wisdom and think about how I was going to do everything long term. I think part of the gifts that I have is being able to see, again, part of being a clinician, one of my gifts is to be able to see people's future, and not in the like psychic way, but more about seeing their strengths, their capacities, their desires, and really having a vision for them in the future. And so I think I adapted that to my business as well. Like, what is it that I envision for my future? How do I create this as a sustainable model for the long term? So, I mean, I started my first business in 2007, and so that'll be, you know, in a couple of years it'll be 20 years, and I feel like I, because of some of those foundations that I put into place, I feel like I've been able to continue to build on those and really have a framework for how to make it a long-term sustainable, successful practice.
Yeah, I was so into your story. I'm thinking like you kind of just described it, but let's touch on it just in a little bit deeper of
Yeah.
leaders that you have watched really accomplish sustainable success in one area or another, right? I think it's hard in all areas as
Mhm.
humans.
Yeah.
But what were some of the characteristics that you saw in those leaders? And yeah.
Mhm. I think every leader that has built sustainable success, there's one significant marker that they all have, and I think that's self-awareness. Uh,
Mm.
every leader that is able to create sustainable success has a sense of who they are in different spaces, and they actively seek to learn about themselves more and more. So I think that that is the key to any type of sustainable success is to know yourself.
Somebody's listening to this and they're like, I question if I'm really self aware.
Yeah.
Where would you recommend that they start?
That's such a great question. I think that, because therapy in itself, I think, is sometimes not as accessible. And I don't think that it's a fit for everyone. I tell everyone, like, go to therapy, like, take the first step. But it's sometimes not always the right step for people. And sometimes it's not necessarily, again, financially accessible to everyone. It's a huge commitment. I wish that um, it was more accessible. I mean, I have lots of thoughts about that. That's for another time. But I think what's important is just to start to create space for yourself. Sometimes even just journaling, just having time for self-reflection. Whenever I work with leaders, I always tell them take some time for self-reflection at the end of a day and think about, like, how did I engage with that person? What was that interaction like? How was I communicating? How did I feel when that happened? Like, really starting to create a practice to do that. And it doesn't have to be, I think we get intimidated by reflection or being with ourselves or doing any type of journaling. But I think what's important is just having that time to think about, how am I showing up and how am I engaging in my role as a leader? And I think when you do some of that, even if you do that for a month and then go back and read what you wrote, it always gives you some insight about what's happening for you. It always gives you some moments to really understand yourself.
And I like that you're bringing this up and that you are saying to journal about it, because I can just imagine people saying, "Oh, I reflect all the time." And that can be a form of anxiety, right? When we like overly reflect and
Mhm.
question ourselves or shame ourselves and put those pieces on it, but instead to do it out of a point of curiosity of
Yeah.
like, why did I do that? Where did that come from?
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I think looking at with curiosity and non-judgment.
Yeah.
Like, we all have responses for different reasons, either from our past experiences, based on, unresolved things in our life, based on our family of origin, based on the dynamics in a relationship. There's so many things um, that cause us to be responsive or reactive or to feel certain ways. And so to be able to have curiosity and look at it with non-judgment is really helpful. I know that I get into those places too where I'm like, okay, how much more self-reflection can I do and how much more therapy can I do? Like, like, am I too self-reflective? But again, I think it's just taking a little bit of time to really think about, why am I doing what I'm doing? And again, within a space of curiosity and non-judgment.
And I like that you also shared that you have been doing therapy for 30 years, because I feel like over the years, if I were to count, it's definitely been probably 13 to 14
Mhm,
and not consistent, right? And you
mhm,
talked about therapists. I think it's really important to interview therapists
mhm,
because you want to make sure it's the right fit
mhm.
when going that route. And sometimes you don't find out for a little bit, and that's okay. There's always something to learn from people. Often, I feel like when I share that with people, they look at me like, and you're still going to therapy? Like, haven't you figured it out yet, Allie? But I am at this place where I can't get rid of my therapist. Like, I can't get off that schedule because it's impossible to get on your therapist's schedule and a good therapist. And I do have EMDR therapy with that therapist. Obviously, not all the time, right? EMDR therapy can be sprinkled in. It doesn't mean you're doing it every session because that could be intense.
It is very intense. Yeah, I agree. No, you're 100% right. It's all about the fit. More often than not, I think the research shows that the rate of success in therapy is really attributed to the relationship that you have with your therapist. It's not about their methodology. It's not about any type of intervention. It's about how you feel when you're with that person. And so interviewing and understanding, like really feeling like, oh, I feel understood. I feel heard. And this is a place where I can just be, I think is really important.
Yeah. So, do you have somebody in your life that has been a mentor per se that has really exhibited sustainable success?
Oh, yeah. I actually have. I did, when I first came to Denver, I did a leadership program, the one that I referenced. It was called the Circle of Latina Leadership. And I actually was working, I was at the rec center. I was at the recreation center and looked at like the bilingual, one of the bilingual publications that we have here. And I had a little advertisement for this leadership program. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect. I ended up doing it. And the person who led that program was, her name is Juana Bordas. And she has been a force of nature, I think, in our community in terms of leadership. She's written books on multicultural leadership. And I mean, who knows when she started? I imagine that she probably started when she from the womb, but um, she, she's in her early 80s and she's still going strong. Like
Oh,
she's
how cool.
stages. She's still like, I see her at events all the time. She has more energy than I do. So she's absolutely been an example of sustainable leadership. I mean, that's what I aspire to be, is to have that energy, commitment, and dedication to building leadership until my 80s.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. How about a quote? It can be from you, it can be from somebody else that you feel really speaks to sustainable success.
Ah, that's such a okay. This is the quote that I came to. I have lots of different quotes. I look at quotes all the time. But Maya Angelou has been, obviously, she's an important figure in so many people's lives in terms of her authorship. But like, I discovered her when I was in middle school, and she says, this is the quote from her: "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And I think relationship is all sustainable leadership is all about relationship.
Yes.
People want to be under your leadership or learn from you if they feel good, if they feel you are present with them. And so I think that is the most important thing. Like, we can do all the leadership development we want, but when people feel good around you and they feel in relationship with you, that's when you're going to have sustainable success.
And it's so true. I just did a little bit of this exercise with an HR woman who is devising like a leadership kind of education for the year. And we were talking about like what motivates people beyond money. And I said, I can tell you, it's like how they make you feel. And we kind of went through, it's that they have empathy, it's that they listen, they ask questions, like they are just leaders. I
Hmm.
didn't care about the money when I had that because I was learning so much from that type of leader by just being under them and being able to work with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I want to be in spaces where I feel good. Like, especially now at this age and like at this stage in the game for me, like, I'm so committed to being in places where I feel good and I feel valued. And I mean, I'm 100, it doesn't, the money doesn't matter to me. If I feel that, I'll stay, long term. I'll do the work, for very little money. Not that I want to do work for very little money, but I'm just saying, I think for everyone. I mean, I know that you've probably talked to many people who've been in companies and organizations, and they've said, I've stayed because I uh, feel valued, I feel heard, I feel like, the culture is healthy. And so there's huge amounts of value in that I think leaders really need to understand.
Wonderful. So we're going to have your information in the show notes, but is there anything you want to share before we close with what your favorite snack is?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So it's going to make me sound so terrible. I'm not a snacker. I always am envious of people who can like get up in the middle of the night and like get a snack. I wish I could do that. I just can't. I don't know why. But I will say, if I could say the thing that I always crave the most that I always want to get like at the end of the day at a happy hour is like a nice dirty martini and either fries and oysters or, some combination of that. I'll say that's my snack.
That is so good. Do you have a favorite type of oyster?
Oh gosh, no. And
That's
I'm gonna
okay.
say, I go to a place here in Denver, and we're laughing because like all the seafood has to get flown in here because we're a landlocked
Yes.
state. So why I eat seafood here is like an anomaly. Um, but I will say that I think it's called the Pink Cowboy, and I don't know
Mm.
how to you know like to tell you more about that, but it's one that is one that I usually get in the place that I go.
Marisol, I am so grateful for our time together, and I can't wait to start listening to your podcast. I was so excited when I read that. So you're retiring from being a therapist per se,
Yes.
but not from your podcast, right?
Actually, I've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but I'm going to come back soon.
Okay,
So, but I do have 3 seasons, I think. So there's a lot to listen to.
love it. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to Snack Leadership. I hope you felt inspiration, motivation, and felt your mindset spark. Snack Leadership is recorded and produced by myself, Ali Camilletti, and music by Shireen Amini.